Well, unfortunately, currently Asian Americans in the United States are facing essentially two viruses. One virus is COVID-19 that all Americans are facing, and in fact, the entire world is facing. And all of us are living in fear of the health related to that. But the second virus that Asian Americans are facing is one of racism, that of targeting Asian Americans for acts of hate or words of hate because of the fact that they're Asian American. This is based on misinformation. This is based on stereotypes about Asian Americans, that somehow we are special transmitters of the disease or that we are special carriers of COVID-19.
And we have seen a response. New York City's Commission on Human Rights launching the $100,000 anti-Asian discrimination effort, not just to educate the public, but also make it easier to report these instances. But since discrimination starts with a person's mindset, is legislation the most effective way to fight it, or are there other, perhaps more effective or immediate actions that can be taken?
I think the answer is all of the above. Certainly legislation can help, but oftentimes legislation comes on, if you will, the backside, after an act of hate has already happened, after a hate incident has already taken place. What we also need to worry about and fixate on is the front side, how to cause this from happening in the first place. In the first instance, it's about getting the correct information out there, not having misinformation, not having words that will stigmatize a community. At the outset of the show, you talked about people using the words Chinese virus or Kung flu, as some people have said. Those words stigmatize the Asian American population. They have no medical benefit, but they clearly cause harm to the community. So even by using the proper terms will help to protect the Asian American community.
So then do public places, businesses and schools have a responsibility to really help curb some of this discriminatory behavior that we're seeing, not just amongst Asian Americans, but also towards other minority groups?
Absolutely. Now, one of the things we have to remember is that COVID-19 is affecting all populations in different ways. And certainly for communities of color, we're facing a lot of disparate impacts. For the Asian American community, it is about racism. It is about some of those aspects of hate that we are seeing. But for the African American, Hispanic, and Pacific Islander communities, it is also about the health effects. The fact that those communities are suffering from the virus in disparate rates and have mortality rates that are much higher than the general community. So we all need to be talking about how we work together to fight this virus and not find ways to divide us or split us apart.
And as you mentioned, this is obviously happening at a time when people they're stressed out, they have a lot of anxiety, not just from the pandemic, but also the economic fallout. We're having, people worrying about their financial security and jobs. How is this added layer of discrimination affecting the livelihoods and well-being of the Asian American community?
Well, certainly for the Asian American business community, they were the first ones to face this racism, first ones to face this disparate impact. Even starting in mid-January, before there were any reported cases of COVID-19 in the United States, Asian American businesses, restaurants, grocery stores, suffered a huge decline in businesses. Now, some elected officials went to Chinatowns, went to Asian grocery stores to talk about their racism even then. And they were good to recognize that we all need to speak out early. Yeah, obviously, again, that was based on misinformation about Asian American hygiene or the foods that we eat. Obviously, that's not true, but we need to educate the community as a whole that these stereotypes are just wrong. They don't lead to the right results when we try to fight this pandemic.
So then what are community groups doing to combat and also raise awareness about these issues and a lot of the misinformation out there?
Well, first of all, it is through media such as this to talk about the fact that Asian Americans are facing this pandemic just like everyone else. The fact that this virus does not recognize borders, does not recognize whether you are a citizen or whether you are an immigrant, and that it affects us all in the same medical way. I think the other thing that we are trying to do is educate the community about what we could do to address some of this racism. We're offering what you call bystander intervention training. Give people the tools. If they see someone that is experiencing an act of hate, experiencing this type of racism, to do something about it. Now, certainly we do not want people to be superheroes. We don't want people to put themselves in physical harm's way. But oftentimes there are little things that people can do to de-escalate a situation, to make that victim feel a little bit more protected and to reduce the amount of mental trauma that people face in dealing with this pandemic and dealing with this racism.